Right. All right. We are live and we are recording. Thank you very much, Siah. I appreciate you being on. And how's your evening going, man?
You're welcome. You're welcome. My day and my evening is amazing, man. Never been better in my life. That's the best way I can sum it up. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm a father of two. I have a 15-year-old. I have a 3-year-old, and my 15-year-old is in bodybuilding as well. So, we eat our meals together, and then, my little one, she's like right in the middle, just doing her thing, loving
God,
life, man. So we're just full of positive energy and positive vibes over here.
man.
You
And
know?
and let me add to that, empowering
Yeah.
energy and an empowering vibe because I
Yeah.
mean, the reason why, man, what I love about this, and we talked about this a little bit right before we hit the record and everything, is the
Yeah.
universe aligns itself. You put out an intention, you start meeting people in that intention.
Absolutely.
And because I was there supporting my buddy Michael, but I remember just
Yes.
when I got there, man, your team, the energy, the family, it just definitely showed out, and it was
Yes.
the PMBA show, the Muscle Magazine, I believe,
Yeah. Iron
in
Man
El
magazine.
Segundo, Iron
Yes.
Man
Iron
magazine.
Man
Sorry,
magazine. Yes.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and for all my listeners and viewers, this is exactly. I actually reached out to this guy, went to go look for him because of the vibe and everything that he had. Um, and in one particular, real quick, I just want to just add this real quick because I spoke about you and your family at a previous show of mine. But when you got up on stage and then like your daughter just like go dad, go everything, and I was just like,
Yes.
this is
Yes.
absolutely the most. What was that like for you, man? Like at that show and the family and the whole nine yards.
It was probably one of the most memorable times in my life, because it's
Mm-hmm.
a culmination point, with my family coming together, right? I've competed before my daughter was born, and when it was just my son, and I would always invite him to my shows. Hey, son, you want to go to the show? No, I'm good. Right. Until one day last year, he decided, he's like, yeah, you know what? I'll come check it out. And then he got inspired. He was like, this is what you do? And then he's like, Dad, I want to bodybuild. So we've been working on his journey progressively all year. And then, again, now my daughter's in the picture, but she's a little young to kind of understand fully what's going on. But now she's older, she can speak more. She understands, and she comes to the practices, so she sees the preparation work. So, having my son was on stage with me at the time, in a different category, and then now looking out into the audience, and my daughter is fully coherent as far as what's going on, and I
My
totally lost
God.
bearing on stage. I mean, I was holding a pose, and I looked over and saw her and heard her screaming, and I just busted out laughing, because it was just, I was like, wow, this is, and that's what the PNBA is about. It's a family ran organization, from mom, dad, their children, and they're very welcoming to family. So it was just such a safe space for me and my family, and then for all of us to just be, united around this one sport called natural bodybuilding.
Wow, I love that. I love that. It sounds
Yeah.
like you and your team have that vibe of like a higher purpose of a higher energy, like towards like can you go into that? Is that like a reflection of you? Is that just like a reflection of everybody
Yes.
else? Like where does that come from?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the team was when I first started it, I just handpicked, around 7 individuals that were in pretty decent shape that looked like, they wanted to bodybuild. I was like, hey, you want to bodybuild? Come on, I'll teach you. And I wanted a small, intricate, tight-knit group that we just go and focus on just competing, training together, the camaraderie that comes along with it. And
Mm-hmm.
in a short space of maybe 20 to 30 days, the team tripled in size. And I noticed people were coming to me not necessarily just for bodybuilding, but they were coming to me because, hey, you're like a father figure to me, or you're like a mentor. I'm going through depression and I need an outlet. And I always love to lift weights, and I figure, hey, why not bodybuild? I'm overweight. and I'm trying to get back in shape. Let me just give my shot at bodybuilding. I'm going through a divorce. I'm grieving the death of a loved one, and all of a sudden I found, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, but I found myself in this
Hmm.
very precarious position. I'm like, well, this is not initially what I intended, but okay. I see what you're doing, universe. I'll accept the challenge, And now I took up the task of, transforming these not bodies but lives, like souls, right? And I
Mm.
started really speaking to the spirit that was in them and said, hey, you know what? If we start the work on that level, then the external will take care of itself. So over time, we just kind of morphed into, and I'm like, the only way this is going to work is that there has to be trust, there has to be, genuine love that exists between me and them. And I took the first leap and I let them know, like, you know what, I do love you, right? And I have no qualms in saying that because I love the spirit that's inside this human being. And
Hmm.
it's my job, as I'm alive, to do the best possible work on planet Earth before my time is up. And if my work is I can touch and make a difference in a life, and if bodybuilding is the vessel, then so be it, right? So that's initially what happened, and then as I gave, I received, right? So I started receiving the love, and receiving the respect and the admiration, and then now when I deal with them and my team, which is like my family, an extension of my family, I deal with them with the same care and delicateness as I would my children, right? I speak to them in only positive and constructive manner. I embrace them when I see them. They get hugs, happy birthdays, just check out, hey, just checking up on you. Oh, coach, I'm sorry I missed checking. It doesn't matter. I'm just checking up on you. I want to know how you're doing. So
Mm.
we just kind of grew into that. And something I call the artistry of allowing. I just allow nature and a natural course to just take its form, and it grew into naturally what you see right now.
Wow. Wow. And how big is the Deadly Fit Bodies family now?
Yeah, right. So, Deadly Fit Bodies is my personal company,
Okay.
that I started, yeah, last year. So 2022, at the beginning of 2022.
Hmm.
And the team itself is, called the Royal Family. So the Royal Family is essentially a product of my company. But yeah, so the competitive team, at our height, we were nearly around 50 active competitors. Right now,
Wow, that's actually a lot.
yeah, right now I'm kind of reducing the numbers a little bit, but we're roughly around, 35 to about 40, fluctuate, active competitors, both mixture of pros and amateurs.
Wow.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah.
That's awesome. Like I love the fact that you harped on the fact you make like their check-ins about them, their check-ins, not your
Yes.
check-ins, right? And I could
Yes.
see that being an I don't want to say an issue, but definitely a challenge between some coaches sometimes to, always be reminded of it's not about you, it's about them. And the
Yes.
fact that you take that on so gracefully, so nonchalantly, like is that something like who you've always been? Is that somewhere where you've always been kind of like the big Papa Bear figure for other people? Like, would you say that's just kind of who you always been? Yeah, who you've always been.
I think, if I'm honestly speaking, it's a role that the divine creators and architect of this world, this life that we know, kind of imposed on me and said, you know what, I know what you personally want to do. Because if you leave it up to me, Siah would just focus on Siah, and one or two people in proximity, and just go, because I'm a competitor first. So I'm going to go after my goals, my ambitions, and I have like, I have an obsession for competing, right? I'll compete in
Mm,
anything, just about, right? Like, and if I lose, let's run it back, right? Like, we ain't gonna stop running it back until I win. So I'm like, that's default setting, but things orchestrate itself naturally where it puts me in this role and it says, if in order for you to develop into the type of human being that you proclaim that you want to develop into, you're going to have to do these things. So
Hmm.
if you rewind a few years ago, I was never the guy that was going to tell another man that I love you. Like you couldn't even force me to do that. Like I could count on probably three fingers the amount of time I even told my father I loved him. It was just an understood thing. That's part of our culture. Yeah, you my dad. Of course I love you. Like I don't have to say it, but
Hmm.
I found myself in this position where if someone is crying on your shoulders, another grown man, because of whatever trauma they are going through at the time, the solution to that scenario, it's not suck it up, tough it out, man up, punch in the chest, right? Like that's not going to work. That's not the solution for that. It's a hug and a really tight embrace, right? And letting them know you're safe, you're secure, and that someone else, your life is valuable to someone else, right? Like, and I'm that guy, so your life is valuable to me. And I found myself the only solution is to let them know, like, I love you, right? And I noticed with the first time I did that, it was a young man that he just totally lost it, because he was grieving the death of his father, and he calls me at midnight, and he's just losing it. And I woke up, my phone is by the bed. I woke up, I answered the call, and he's like, and I remember distinctly, he was like, I called you because you're like a father figure to me. That's how he left out. I just buried my dad today and I'm losing it.
Hmm.
I can't think straight. I don't know what to do. And I could hear him crying over the phone. And I'm thinking, what do I do? So I'm going through my mental Rolodex of, what do I say? What do I do? He's not in proximity. We're not in the same geographical location, so I can't touch him. I can't reach out to him. I can't go see him. So I'm like, how do I gain control of the situation and for him to kind of recenter and gain control of himself? And my mind just went to, this is a human being, right? That just said that you're like a father to him. What would a father say to a son? And I'm like, I will let my son know that I love him. And that's literally instinctively what came out of my mouth. And the crying
Hmm.
stopped immediately. And he was just all attentive, and it's like almost like that's what he needed to hear in that moment. Someone still loves me, um, like a male figure still loves me. And then we talked for a little bit. I heard the sniffles like stop, and he was like, "You know what? I'm good." I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And then that's when I knew. I said, just the power of communicating, your emotions, um, to someone it's healing, right? Like it can
Right.
heal a lot of wounds.
God, yeah. I feel like you just illustrated one of the bigger challenges that goes on with men as a whole, which is
Yes.
like our ability to be vulnerable with ourselves, express our emotions authentically. And it does feel like there's a huge societal pressure to hold it in as men, and
Yes.
it's a challenging slope, but it seems like you've kind of you just said it. You said a few years ago you wouldn't have been doing this. Like you wouldn't actually be telling men I love you. But so what changed?
Um, to be honest, whew, I lost my older brother to suicide, and I
Hmm.
grieved
Hmm.
silently for X amount of years. Actually, tomorrow is the 10th year anniversary of it. So
Oh man, sorry to hear, brother. Sorry to hear.
yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
man. That
Yeah,
is.
so it just yeah,
Oh,
so it's and he was the one that got me into bodybuilding, got me into fitness. As little brother to big brother, you want to be your big brother, right? And the paradox of it, we were like two completely different individuals in our personality. Um, but the love and the protectiveness from an older brother to a younger brother was always there. And one of my biggest cheerleaders when I took on the sport of bodybuilding. I distinctly remember his exact words were, he's like, man, when he saw me in getting in contest shape for my first show, he's like, man, you go on stage looking like that, nobody will be able to beat you. And that's something
Mhm.
that a reoccurring, message I keep playing in my head, that so when I approach all of my competitions, that's my mentality. And I think I grieved in silence for many, many years. Like you would never even get me to say this, right? Like in conversation. I would never even admit it. I would never talk about it. Someone would say something. I say, hey, next subject. And then when I decided it was time to face this reality, and it took me 2021, 8 years to like, for my mind to say, okay, you're going to have to face this reality.
Mhm.
And when I did, I just started like, okay, you know what? First step is I have to acknowledge, right? And then, so now when I meet men that are, um, I could that are close to me in some type of affinity, you know, I I think back and said, okay, how many times? When was the last time I even told him that I loved him, right? Mind draws a blank. Okay, you know what? I'll never make that mistake again, right? So if I call you my brother, or you someone that's, I'll have no problems with letting you know right off the bat, hey man, I love you and I appreciate you.
God damn. Yeah. And I love and appreciate you, man, for sharing that and
Thank
giving
you.
that space,
Thank
man.
you.
Oof. Ooh, you got me in my feels right now. Jeez.
Thank you.
God, it is just that is just so important for men these days. You know, you're providing a space,
Yes.
and it sounds like the impact that your brother had on you is this the impact you're making on all these young men. You know, which is
Yes.
God, we need that more in this today's
Yes.
society. You know, and men's health, not only like mental and emotional, but then physical. And
Mhm.
I
Yes.
enjoy that everything you're talking about, like bodybuilding. You know, I've always said it to anybody. It's not just about lifting weights. It's not about just
Yes.
making yourself physically looking good and posting selfies on Instagram. Like, is that an added benefit? Yes, that's a great benefit of it, right? But
Yes.
the intrinsics of eating better, making yourself a priority, aiming for a higher version of yourself, as well as actually believing those things are achievable. Like it's what young men and what everybody in general needs more of. And the
Yes.
fact that you talk about that, yeah, you look like you have something to say. Like, yeah, you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you come around my team, my family, I should call it, you will hear that's regular conversation between the men and the women. You'll
Hmm.
hear them expressing love and appreciation and gratitude, um, in a brotherly, sisterly type of way towards each other, and nonstop. That if in our group chat with each other, that's all you hear. And it's so amazing for me to see that they embraced it, because it's a safe space. It's a psychologically safe space, that we know that we're not going to be judged, and we're not going to be criticized for having these emotions and having these feelings and letting them out. And even if we're battling some type of mental health, we know that we have each other and it's okay for us to lean on each other and openly talk about these things, whether it's a marital
Hmm.
issue or just a personal issue, or still overcoming some psychological childhood trauma. But yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon if you get around us. That's why when you see us at our shows, that what we express to each other and to other athletes and just to the audience, that's all genuine. That's not made up. That's not being loud for the sake of being loud. Like we genuinely feel those things towards each other.
Right.
Some of the young women on the team, you know, typical, dealing with some past trauma, and you can fill in the blank with the types of trauma, from maybe some other male figure that they trusted that's supposed to act accordingly, and violated that trust, right? So now reestablishing trust with them, that, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what true love, without it being sexualized from a man, is supposed to look like. You're supposed to be treated with dignity and respect and exalted. And the name royal family, in which, we just kind of collectively agreed to call ourselves, the way we greet each other is, hey, what's up, king? Hey, how you doing, queen? Right? To speak that life into the soul and the spirit that's within that person, so they know that whenever they're going about their day and whatever they're doing, what they're doing, and they can always remember, someone thinks of me as a king, someone thinks of me as a queen. So what type of decision would a king or queen make in this situation? And
Mm.
they can now choose the right course, the right actions, especially when you're part of a tribe. You're a tribe. You don't want to let down your fellow tribesmen. Like, they're acting this way, especially when they see me as their coach, acting in a particular manner and the way I carry myself. They're like, well, I definitely don't want this to be a bad reflection on him. So I'm going to make a kingly decision. I'm going to make a queenly decision. I don't need to, male or female, take my shirt off, and because I'm a bodybuilder, and over sexualize myself to gain the wrong attention. So like all of that played a huge factor in their personal development, and then which goes into one of the main and core exercises that I gave them when they first joined the team was redesign your self image. You have the power to
Mm.
create yourself internally, um, into what you always wanted to be. And that's the beauty of, the craft that we do as far as bodybuilding. Yeah, it works on the external, but you got to create a mental image first of, how you want your physique to look. So, but let's take apart your whole character, and let's redesign that, and you now become the architect, and you hold the authority, over yourself to now recreate yourself into, an image. When you look in the mirror, you're like, I love that person. I love that king. I love that queen that's in the mirror. And that's what's going to be reflected onto society, and people are going to treat you the way you treat yourself.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's dude, this is really powerful things, man. And
Thank you.
so where did that, I mean, the royal family, did it always start with calling each other king and queen? Like, did you just, hey, called someone in kings, notice the reaction? Like, where did, because I mean, I see a lot of these things. Like, first of all, I agree with you. I just want to let you know, I 100% agree that I think if you treat
Yes.
people with respect and you hold them into a higher regard, to a higher, class or label per se, they hold themselves accountable to a higher version of themselves by default. But you see it
Yes.
on Instagram, or you see it on social media. Oh, hey king, hey queen, and then something toxic, or hey something like this. But you spoke
Yes.
about it
Yes.
in a very positive way. So, as it
Yes.
always, like, where did that come from? I guess from calling each other. I know you're talking about the results of it, but where did that start?
So, my culture is Jamaican.
Okay.
So, I was born and raised in Jamaica. And within the Jamaican culture, we kind of, there's a fraction of us that talk to each other that way. So we talk to each other, like that, that's, what's up, king, but in patois, right? Like in our language. So I kind of just took that part of my culture, and, because it's, when we deal with each other, it's with super high regard, right? High respect. Islanders have that cultural practice anyway. Like, you greet people, you make eye contact, you're greeting, right? You see someone, you greet, and you greet with respect. And there's a fraction of the culture that speaks that way, that calls, fellow males, kings, and then, we'll call a woman, queen or empress. So I kind of took that, and I took that cultural practice, and I said, you know what, like, I can work with this, eh, with association, and put some definitions behind it. And I believe that when you put out certain labels, it's good to define exactly, okay, what does this label represent? So when you're using it, you understand the context and what you're using it in. We're not talking about the emperor ruler of a city state, kingdom or anything like that. Well, the kingdom is yourself, right? And so we want to. So the philosophy behind, when we actually wrote out the philosophy, um, before we actually implemented it. And I remember having a talk with because me and my business partner, slash brother, Eli, which was at the same show, we
Mm.
talked to each other that way before the team. When we greet each other, a king, and but we understood it was I'm speaking that life into you, reminding you always have authority over yourself. And then we just decided like, hey, let's define these very meticulously and clearly. So when we use them towards the people that we're helping and we're coaching, they understand this is the context. It's not for you to go out there and be like, well, I'm a king and I rule over other people and my
Right.
race, my
Right.
culture is more. No, stop it. Right. No, this is about you having the authority over yourself. The conscious mind can accept and it can reject. Right. So you at all times, at all situations, you have the authority over yourself to accept whatever is being presented or reject it completely, right? You can never accept anything beyond your will, right? So if like, well, they made me. No, you accepted that. So if you accept a label, you accept, you know, anything that people call you, put you in a box. If you accept that, then that becomes your reality. But we're trying to speak life into you and let you know that you don't have to accept any of it. You can say,
Mm.
so what? I don't have muscles. I'll get them. I'll build. I'll put the work in and I'll get them. Right. So what? I'm not. I had someone have a young lady that I'm helping. She's massive weight loss, right? And she's nowhere near contest shape right now. But you had people. She's calling herself a bodybuilder because I'm like, you are. Like, you're in
You
preparation and you're
are.
following
Yeah.
the protocol and you're living the lifestyle. So what if you still got X amount of pounds, right? But someone made fun of her and said, well, you call yourself no bodybuilder. You're not in shape. But because of the way we speak to her and we kind of coached her, she's like, no, I reject that. You get to define me. I get to define me because I have authority over me.
I
Right. And
love
she made
that.
a post about
God.
that. And I was like, there you go. Welcome to the next
My
level.
God. Yo, this is really strong, my man. I'm very happy that I connected with you, and it all makes sense. Just wow. And I love this because you're right. Because just because you don't have this filtered aesthetic look that social media tells you is a bodybuilder, that label, it doesn't mean you're not one. Like you literally are building your body. So how are you not a bodybuilder
Yes,
by default? Right.
exactly.
And obviously that could be taken in so many different directions. But for the matter that we're talking about, it's like, yeah, if for me, I love those transformation stories. I am one of those in general where, I used
Okay.
to be a degenerate drinker, degenerate partier, fast food this, fast food that. And then by the time I stepped up on stage, like my very first time I stepped up on stage was the worst placing I've ever gotten, but it was the most impactful in my life because of what I had
Okay.
to build myself through. And I love that. You just don't know where people are in their process. You don't know if, even if they're not on stage, you don't know where they came from or the things that they're still working through on a regular basis. And like constructing your body is just it's just a microcosm of how you're actually constructing yourself from within. So it's definitely, man, I
Absolutely.
feel like a king just talking to you right now, man. Like I feel
Thank
the
you.
strength.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because I mean, you are, you know what I mean? Like, think about what it is that you're doing. You've taken the initiative, to put your time, your attention, and your energy into something like this, right? Something constructive, something positive, something to help promote, bring awareness. I can just imagine for the many of, people, men and women that you've interviewed on this thing, how the impact that it's had on them, just giving them an outlet, right, to tell their story, to give their philosophy, to be able to reach out and connect with a wider audience, to fulfill their desires of why some of them got into the sport is to to change self, but also motivate and inspire others to do the same. So like anyone that do this type of work that adds and increased value to people, like this is, in my opinion, the best line of work that you could ever, one of the best lines of work you could ever do, right? Like, because it's about adding and increasing value to the human life. And that should
Hmm.
always be applauded. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you. And yeah, well,
no,
I
you're
mean, I
welcome.
get to, but being in the space, man, I get to meet people like you who,
Yeah,
man, you embody a lot of principles and values that I got to be honest, like I didn't really start embracing until a couple of years ago as well. Like I was the same guy that didn't tell too many men I love them. You know, I have a really, a stoic relationship with my father, but kind of like what you said, it's like very understood that the man loves me, I love him. We butt heads all the damn time, but it's because we're,
yeah,
you know, and it's not a bad thing, you know, like that you
yes,
know that. And then I learned a lot in that, you know, because you learn, you know, just that's just how men are, you know, and we kind of have to step, you know, set our boundaries. We got to kind of step firmly in them, and honestly, that's how I grow respect, and that's how me and my dad have respect and love for each other because we stand our ground really hard, and we're like, but we
right,
give way when things are just like, dude, why are we arguing about a NASCAR placement right now? Why are we arguing about if it was
yeah,
offsides or not on this football game? Like yeah, well,
yeah,
there's a time and place, and but
yes,
that balancing that ego thing, that and a healthy balance of our ego, especially amongst men,
yes,
is very very healthy, and the fact that you've created that dynamic is interesting
yes,
in that too. Um,
yes,
you
and
you go
uh,
ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I just to kind of touch on that, I think I remember, in my place of, previous employment, the day I decided to just try it, even at work, right? Just expressing to people how I feel. And and I did it because intrinsically, I'm not I'm an exploder, right? Like meaning if I'm feeling built up, pent up, I'll never take it out on myself. I was never even one like if I'm going through something, let me go drink, let me go party. Like if I'm going through something, let me go find an object or the subject of my aggression and I'm gonna give it to them, right? Like, so we
Mm,
mean in confrontation. And then you go through learning lessons and phases in life, and then you realize like, okay, that didn't solve the problem. It just made it worse, right? And then one of the biggest lessons I learned from being that alpha, macho, aggressive is that, when you bully the bully, you yourself become what you despise, right? Because I hated bullies. I got bullied when I came to America, like day one off the plane, bullied. And
mhm,
then, and so I just grew to hate bullies. So then bullies became the target of, specifically target of my aggression. Like, you may not have done nothing to me, but I see you a bully. If I'm angry, I'm coming after you because, you can take this heat. And then I realized one day, like, man, people are looking at you like you're the bigger bully because you should know better. So then I was like, well, how do I manage what I'm feeling? And then I went to the next phase of just hold it and displace it somewhere else. And then I grew over time, like I don't really like that either.
mhm,
Because the feeling to confront the subject of what's sparking these emotions, like it's still there. Like I need to let this person know, but like how can I do that, without you know being less of a man and be like, oh, you're too sensitive. And it's like, you know what, I'm a big guy with muscles, and and people are very much well aware that I can handle myself.
mhm,
And I've been told sometimes, in my previous place of employment, like, man, unless you smile and people talk to you, you're intimidating. So I was like, okay, so I have that demeanor. So if I express myself in this way, well, see what we'll find out. So I remember, and it was a superior, right? One of my supervisors, um, reacted to me in a manner that I thought we were better than that as far as our relationship is concerned. And then, and he was my supervisor, but I was older than this guy, and in
mhm,
my culture, you respect your elders, right? And, and he responded to me in a way that I just didn't like. And I remember I went to my office and then I sat down, said, I don't like this feeling. I'm going to go tell him exactly how I feel. And I walked right back to his office and I went to his door. I said, bing, bing. He turned around. He's like, hey, what's up? I said, you hurt my feelings. Just like that.
Hmm.
I was like, the way you talked to me just now, I did not expect that from you, and I felt that, you know, and I'm not really looking for any explanation or any solution, but I wanted you to know that because, like yeah, like I needed to express this to you, and then he was shocked. He didn't even know what to say in response because here's
Oh.
this, you know, big muscular guy, much bigger than him, that can clearly take him out if the conversation got aggressive, right? But I exercised restraint, but I was able to clearly communicate what I was feeling, and then I just turned around and I left. And on the drive home, I was smiling from ear to ear. And I was like, I can't believe I just did that. And I was like, well, how did that make you feel? Good. Because now he gets to go home with that on his conscience that he disrespected and he hurt somebody that
Hmm.
it was completely unwarranted. And then after that day, I remember that just became my practice. I was never afraid to just express that aspect, that side of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important because I don't feel like a lot of people are capable of that, and I think we're provided so many opportunities to
Yes.
handle things in different ways, regardless of how our emotions are spiked. You know, um,
Yes.
I remember I interviewed one lady before who, anyway, she was talking about what, her relationship with her husband, things that her husband does sometimes that upsets her. But she was just like,
Hmm.
he's just a trigger, and that's for me to figure out what it is about that triggered me, and just kind
Yes.
of what you said is some people just present themselves, they say something and they don't mean it in any way, one way, shape, or another. And the way
Yes.
we interpret it doesn't have to always be the way that we interpret it. It could mean so many different things.
True.
But
Very
sometimes if
true.
we get an emotional trigger, we say, "Oh, they make me upset. They do this," and it puts the
True.
power into them. But and just like, no, no, no,
True.
they're just a trigger. I'm upset for something that they did, and it's up to me to see
Yes.
how I want to handle this. And but I'm with you, man. I'm an inner exploder. It took me forever to realize that is not the correct way, and I see that so
Yes.
often. Have you have you ever heard of the term emotivism?
No.
Oh, so
No.
emotivism is kind of what we're talking about. Like it's
Mhm.
literally the balance between a logical approach and emotional approach. So emotivism is
True.
like, for example, like let's say Donald Trump, right? I know he's a very polarizing figure. I know he triggers a lot of things. He'll say something, right? And then all of a sudden, this lady
Yes.
who would normally not go out of her way to talk crap or post anything or anything, she then will go in on him just because, well, it's
Mm.
because it's Donald Trump and blah blah blah. It's kind of almost like an excuse
Yes.
because your emotions are
Yes.
so far beyond. So that's kind of what emotivism it is.
Yes.
Um, but you
Gotcha.
highlighted it correctly. You do not have to allow someone else have the power to how you decide to respond or react, and you do not have to react in
Absolutely.
that emotion. um
Absolutely.
man, where do you how do we like how do we as a society get to that? Because I feel like that's so huge, and like how do we get to that point? And I'm not trying to ask a loaded question, but I'm just thinking out loud.
No, it's not a loaded question. And sometimes the answers and solutions can be found in the exact same space, right? Just in a
Mm.
different degree. You just gotta, instead of sitting on this side of the table, get up and go on the other side. Look at the same problem from that side, and I guarantee you'll see it differently. And I say that to say that I think the practice in which my team has is part of the solution, right? All solutions start with self. I think there's so many people that are trying to change the world by looking and identifying things in the world that from where they're sitting, seems to be a problem, and saying, okay, well, let me go fix him, let me go fix her, let me go fix that. And I believe if everyone took a self introspective approach, right? Like the work is done. If I provide you with the tools and the resources so you can do the work on yourself, that's it. And all it takes, if one person changes, the world changes, right?
Mm,
That one person in the world just made a difference in the world because they changed. And then, so now 5, 10 people changed. And that space of the world in which those 10 people occupy changed. So
mm,
I think the change starts from the individual instead of trying to do it on a macro level. Because we've tried the macro approach from as long as I can remember, this next leader gets voted in, and this next person that, and there's always a small percentage that resist, right? Because it resists the change, and they can't identify with who is, publicizing this message of change. So yeah, I've found my team is very diverse. It's not built of one race, one religion, one ethnic background, one gender, one sexual preference. Like we're very diverse, but the commonality that brings us all together, besides the sport of bodybuilding, is that it's an individual. It's up to each individual to introspect, and bring about the best qualities, the best human qualities that they possibly can. And when everyone takes that ownership and that responsibility, that's how our team functions. So it's I don't there's no one self-regulating, even me as a coach. If you think I'm around checking on people and make sure that they eat their meal plans and do this and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to and they're living life, and representing the team and themselves in the best. I don't have to do that. They'll do that all on their own,
mm,
and I could probably say that they do that on their own, because I've given them the tools that, hey, this is you. The world that you have to be an active participant in creating the world that you want to see, the society that you want to see. And it starts with you. Don't worry about the next person that needs to be changed or the next person that's not doing it. You do it. If you see them not doing it, then that only means one thing. That means that you're supposed to be doing it. If you see no one saying anything, then that means you're supposed to say it because you see it, so you say it. You see it, so you do it. If you see it not being done, so I believe it, and that's my philosophy, like my approach. And I think that it just starts from the individual, and I think on a micro level, and if every individual just focus on, it's just like that's why bodybuilding, I think, is the perfect complement to what we're talking about. Because you could be a part of a bodybuilding team, but when you're on stage, it's just you. I'm not up there with my athletes. They're up there by themselves. It's you got to pose. You got to show your physique. You have to put the food in your mouth, chew it, and swallow. Right. You have to pick the weight up and put it down. Even if I'm in the gym with you, you still got to do the reps and sets. Like it's
right.
you. So so if you take that lesson and you superimpose that on other areas of a person's life, I think you can surmise that growth, change in the world that we want to see starts with the individual.
Mm, yeah. And I like the fact that you highlighted that at the very beginning, which is you're a competitor first. So you got to take care of
Yes,
yourself. And and I feel like
yes,
that's one of the bigger lessons that I've had to learn. It's like I can tell my kids everything about how to be better people or how to do this and how to do that, but if I'm not exhibiting the same values that I'm preaching upon, then it really falls on deaf ears because
that's
who you are and what you do says way more than what you actually say about yourself, you know? And it's
absolutely.
my God, it's so important. This. I gotta tell you, so this is one enlightening conversation that I
Thank you.
had a feeling it was gonna be like this, but this is just very very enlightening.
Absolutely.
My God, real quick, the one of the things that I definitely also wanted to talk to you about is we were stationed in the same place
Yes,
unknowingly and in the same branch, right?
yes,
So yeah, because so South Carolina, right? That was were you at Naval Weapons
yes.
Stations? Is that where you were at again?
No, no, I was on Paris Island.
Okay,
I was on Paris Island.
okay,
I was on the recruit depot. So I went to boot camp on in Paris Island. Then I went up to Lejeune for combat training and my MOS. And my first duty station ended up being right back at Paris Island.
okay. And you were in the what branch were you in?
Marines.
Marines. All right, yeah. Sorry, hey man,
Yeah.
I'm just I only know Navy
Oh,
things,
okay,
and so
okay.
that's why I'm just like, bro, I
Oh,
don't.
okay, okay. No, all good.
Well,
All
no, it's
good.
funny
Yeah.
because it's like everybody is a MOS Navy. It's rate.
Right. Yep.
You guys have like your sergeants and things. We just have our petty officers, and it's
Yes. Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of what I wanted to ask you about that was like a lot of the principles you speak about, a lot of the camaraderie, energy, the vibes, the team of knowing that they play a vital role in their own thing. Like, did you learn that from the military? Would you say some of that kind of carried over as well, or can you go into that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the my team is predominantly all military. So if you didn't
Oh,
know,
okay.
yeah. So yeah, the team is predominantly active duty military. Um, but also, from prior to the military, growing up, I played on sports teams, and if you played organized sports, you learn the importance of teamwork right then and there, right? And my sport of choice was basketball. I tried to play soccer like every other Jamaican, but I wasn't very good at it, so I gave that up quick. And then took my shot at baseball, and I loved baseball too. But growing up, once we got to New York, we were in the Bronx. There wasn't really any place to play because it was all city to play baseball, So I was like, all right, I need something, And then I picked up basketball, and I was like, all right, well, I guess this is my sport, and I fell in love with basketball. And played on junior varsity, varsity, out in town, outside of school leagues and stuff like that. So yeah, I believe um, being a part of a team, is very important to learn the value of teamwork, camaraderie, being able to trust and depend on people to your left and to your right, and then the common goal is to go and win, and I think,
Mhm.
it instills that level of competition, in you where like, yeah, you realize like, okay, I can go out here and have fun, but nothing feels as enjoyable as that victory, right? And it's not something you can achieve on your own. It takes every member of this team that you're gonna have to learn to rely on them as well as they rely on you to do your part in order to achieve this ultimate victory. So I think in my youth that was like my foundation. Then the military just it amplified it because you quickly realize like, oh crap, I trust these men and women around me, and we trust each other to do our jobs, or
Mhm.
to play our parts and our role and show up, and you can accomplish anything, right?
Yeah, yeah. The military in
Yeah.
general just is so many lessons to be had, and then
Yes.
especially like the teamwork and everything. Because in the military, you don't choose your team. Like you do not choose it. It
No.
and they come from
Uh,
everywhere and everything.
yes.
And
Yes.
it was definitely one of the first times in my life that I had to practice like honest tolerance. Like for
Mm,
example, right? Like we talked about emotivism. We talked about how sometimes we give ourselves an excuse to react. I remember there was this
yeah.
guy in my A school, and he asked me, right? He just goes out of nowhere. He goes, hey there, cat. Do you see in widescreen? Right? Talk about I thought he was making an Asian joke, right? And everything, right? And I
Yeah.
lost my temper for a little bit. I'm like, but then I thought about it in the back of my head. This kid's from like nowhere, Alabama. He probably has never
Mm-hmm.
seen an Asian person in his entire life, with the exception of
Mm-hmm.
TV. Right? Didn't have social media back then. It was like back in the early 2000s, and it's just
Right.
like I can choose a lot of different ways, even though I can act like I'm offended or be whatever. I can just literally show some compassion, enlighten them, educate them, and also just show them another way of responding, because at the end of the
Yes.
day, we're going to be in war together, and I have to trust this guy to do his job. I have to trust this guy to do whatever.
Yes.
So how am I supposed to create that if all I'm doing is burning him at every opportunity that I can, even though I know there's a better
Yes.
way of approaching things, you know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I had to learn that. And another thing is because we're talking about how to, you spoke, which, about speaking into existence, like speaking positively, speaking about growing.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, man, that for me, I learned that directly in the Navy, because in the Navy, when I was in, it was a lot of negative reciprocation. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. Well, I'm this rank and you're not this rank and you're that
Yes.
and you're this. And it's
Yes.
just so
Yes.
destructive and so toxic. And,
Yes.
it
Yep.
it took I got to tell you, man, it took me a good year or year and a half to get out of that, as well as I didn't realize
Mm.
like I was doing that sometimes to my kids or to my family, and it was just like, God, it's a
Mm.
just kind of what we're talking about. If you put yourself around that energy, you end up becoming a byproduct of that
Yes.
energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
You know,
yeah, and for me, shout out to my parents and my culture, man. The older I get, the more appreciation I have for them and for where I'm from, because the country motto in Jamaica is out of many one, right? One people. So, I was never raised, I swear, like I was never raised to identify myself with a color or identify other people with a color. Like I didn't even knew that existed, right? And the culture in Jamaica is very diverse. You have leftover settlers from Scotland and Ireland. There's Chinese there. There's Indian, like from India. There's the native West Indian that's there, and then the Africans, that came, right? So it's a lot of the Caribbean is that way. So we grow up, you see it, not in at least where I grew up, not in a very large scale, but the cultural social programming was people, right? Like,
mm,
so we identified by our geographical location. Hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from, the city. I'm from the town. I'm from this, that. So I never knew when once we relocated to America, I didn't know that people actually identify by skin color. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. He
right.
doesn't look black, right? Like I know what black looks like, man. I passed kindergarten. He doesn't look white. Like that. That's not even close to white. So my logical aspect of my brain was like, what's wrong with these people, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I remember having a conversation with my mom one day. She's like, "Oh, don't worry about it, baby. You just love everybody." So I grew up with just you treat people based on their character, and like just I think you alluded to it earlier. You know how they live, right? How they behave, right? The manner in which they carry themselves. So, and whenever I came across, I remember the first time I came encounter with something like that, it was foreign to me. I just brushed it off like something's wrong with this person, man.
Yeah.
And other people were like, "Hey, man, he's this," and they putting labels on him. I was like, "Well, I don't even know what that means," because I wasn't even. It wasn't until yeah, I would want to say like my early to mid 20s is when I actually learned about the history of America and some of those things, right? Cultural differences and cultural friction. So I just thought something was wrong with people. Like, man, something's wrong with him. I'm just gonna relocate myself over here. With people that are. But the crowd that I moved in was always very diverse, regardless of where I was at, because I never accepted that form of social programming, and I rejected that. And I still do. I reject that ideology
Right.
emphatically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. I rejected in its entirety. And I mean, my experience is a little bit different. I got the bullying, I got the constant, hey, you're this, you're that, because you're Asian. And here's the thing: is I think a benefit of me is I'm adopted, right? My parents are white, I'm Asian, and everybody always used to point out that contrast. But my parents always treated me like I was their child, regardless of what our race was or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that definitely enabled when people were, oh, you're this because you're Asian. I would be like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't have to do these things just because of a box you put me in. And you're right.
Exactly.
Now, mind you, it took me a little bit. It took me a little bit
Yes.
to finally accept that, because I think we're taught, for whatever reason, we're taught to act out. We're taught to make it about them and blame them or whatever. And in all honesty, that's
Yes.
what kind of got me into bodybuilding and got me into everything else.
Mm.
But it also made me realize that the reason why I built myself up through bodybuilding was just more of my self talk about what these comments were, rather than what the comments were themselves. And if they were saying
Yes.
something of some dynamic and it was affecting me, then something about it is actually affecting me. Like we talked about, the trigger, and it's up to me to figure out what I want to do with it. And yeah, now it's a whole nother way of just approaching it and enabling. And man, this is so important with that. You know, I guess I got to talk about bodybuilding at some point in dynamic, right? Actually, with shows and things like that. Um, so
Yeah.
you're talking about the PMBA. You're saying that's a very good family vibe of an organization.
Yes.
Are there any other shows? I think you said you're getting ready for Mr. America, right? Here soon.
Um, well, yeah, we're actually we kind of shifted because I got athletes in the shoot that everyone wants to go to the natural Olympia in November.
Okay.
So I kind of had to make a coach's decision on what's in their best interest, and I talked to them about it, and I gave them the opportunity, like, you know, we've been cyclical on the stages, month after month. Now the real competitors, like the seasoned competitors and the ones that use the strategy I use, like where I don't start the season hard. Like I gradually improve and I go hard to finish strong. I'm like, those competitors are coming out now. So, we could either go do another show or we can like really buckle in and just give 100 gas for this Olympia and just go stand among the best on, internationally. So I think we chose, collectively, like, hey, let's just, for those athletes that were slated for that, let's go shift speeds and let's just go all in, 100% on the Olympia. So we got Team USA on the 23rd, and then for those athletes specifically, they're gonna just lock in on the Olympia.
Wow. Is that a normal approach for your team? Like you guys kind of take it like one show at a time. Let's all get ready for like the same event, be on the same everything.
Um, Yes, and there are different levels of competitors on the team. There are those that are still trying to get their feet wet, doing their first shows, their second shows, gradually improving, and then there's some seasoned ones that been with me since the inception of the team, and they are using that approach now, where it's like, all right, you've already got your feet wet, you got the experience, you've been to multiple shows now within the past year and a half. Now, let's make it count. Let's not no longer compete just to compete. You got that. Let's go for something, right? It's all about leveling up, beating the last physique, beating the last placing. And then the pinnacle, the Olympia, to me, I think is it's a great way to kind of see where you stack up now internationally, right? Because like I tell my team, regardless of how you place at the Olympia, when you walk away from the Olympia, you get to say, you get to put in the world next to your placing, right? So whatever
Mm.
you come in, fifth, sixth, seventh, tenth in the world, right? Because it's a global competition.
Well, I've I've yet to attend a natural Olympia. Like I'm still getting my feet wet in this space. So where's
Gotcha.
that at? How many athletes are usually in that competition?
That's going to be it's usually held at the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And typically, yeah, so I'm I don't know the approximate count, but I'm assuming I would say, because it's 2 days. There's Fridays competition for amateurs, and then Saturdays for pros, and that's like a all day thing. So I want to say it's easily over 300, plus
Wow.
competitors between both
Wow.
days. Yeah, across globally too. Yeah, so
Wow.
you got
300.
the other countries, they show up with their teams. You got and they got their country swag on, their country flag, and that's the cool thing too. If you top placings, you get on the podium and they play the national anthem from your country. So
Oh,
it
that's
it shows a
beautiful.
lot of respect, cultural respect too. So That it's the place for natural bodybuilding. I think that's the place to be. That's the best way to finish off the year.
Wow. 300. I'm just imagining. I can imagine because you already get that vibe with teams in bigger shows. So I can only
Yes,
imagine if you're like representing your country, like so much
yes,
more to be, especially when there's a lot of other cultures who actually seem to be prideful about their country and their culture, opposed to
yeah,
America, where it seems like
yeah.
a lot of people just, I don't know, it's not popular to be proud of where we're from, even though I feel like we have better than anybody else. Um, that's great. So how did you guys did you guys
Yeah.
do this event last year? Did you guys
We did,
how'd you
we
guys do?
did. We did really good. We brought a total of 10 athletes. We had about 13 or 14 that qualified, but 10 of
Mm.
them actually showed up. And we did really good. I think, you know, for majority of our athletes placed anywhere within the top 10 out of all 10 of them, right? I think maybe one or two of them, but they were the two that placed out of the top 10 were in really, really deep lineups. I mean, like 25 plus,
Oh wow.
and they were somewhere in the teens, like 16 or 17. But still, I was like, I told them, hold your head high, man. That's something to be proud of. You get to say
Absolutely.
you're in the world, right? Like just wherever you're at in the world goes next to that placing, and not many natural athletes can say that, right? And they can make all the criticism and say, well, I'm better than you. I've won this, that, and the third. Like, well, pull up to the pinnacle then and show
Mm.
how good you really are. And go, don't worry about the local talent. Let's see how you fare against international talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish natural bodybuilding would go more into that because it feels like a lot of just organizations just people just compete within organizations kind of takes away from what you're just saying. Well, all right, then show up to this. This is a free for all and you're competing
Yes.
against everybody. And I definitely feel
Yes.
like that
Pull
could,
up.
yeah, pull up. Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
that 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 confrontation, that challenge doesn't have to be negative. It could be all positive. Iron sharpens
No.
iron, and it's
Yes.
there to like, hey, I'm
Yes.
holding my own. I want you to hold your own. This isn't about
Yes.
exactly winning, but more of just pushing ourselves to be better, and that is just
Yes.
huge. Man,
Yeah.
are
And
you?
and with our team in
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, with our team in that room, we're loud. We are the loudest. Oh, we
Yeah.
we we turn up at the oh man. Every event we turn up, but at the Olympia, I mean all the way up. All the way.
Mm.
There's never a dull moment because we want to make natural bodybuilding fun. We want people because I think one of someone that I consider my big brother mentor in the sport of bodybuilding. I had a conversation with him the other day, and he said if you ever watch a child ride a bike, right? He said whether you intervene or not, that child give that child some time, they're gonna master riding that bike. They're gonna like master the art of riding that bike, whether they fall or not, right? And he said, you know why? And he's like, because they're having fun. Because they're having fun while doing it. So our craft of, bodybuilding, man, like, you got to learn to have fun with it. And that's one of the things that my team, my family, we embrace, man. Once the work is done, it's done, and then when it's time to pull up to the arena, first place, second place, last place, no place, it doesn't matter. Like we are going to have fun, right? And one of the concept that I built, I established a culture of winning, but I defined winning. I said you have to define win. What is a win, right? If you define win as a first place, then you don't understand what winning truly is, right?
Mm.
So I let them know, man, like you pull up to the arena and you got your tan on and you're oiled up and you ready to step on stage. That's the win right there. You're 1% of the 1%. And then if you don't think that that's a win, then what do you call the person who's sitting in the audience watching you criticize and go, well, I always wanted to do that. I could do that. Well, you could, whatever, but you ain't doing it. And what's worse than that? The person who's not at the arena watching the event, who's at home on their second bag of Doritos, saying, telling themselves, "Man, I want to get in shape. I need to get off this couch. And there's way more of them than there's people that's actually pulling up to these shows. So that's the win. You just increase the degree of separation between you and everybody else who is not you. Right. So just understand when you define that win for yourself, now it's time to have fun. And that's one of the big thing. We want to create that culture back around natural bodybuilding again. That this thing got to be fun, man. Like, you win some, and sometimes, you get first. Sometimes you don't. Whatever, right? If someone is first, I shake the man's hand and say, "Hey, man, you got me today, but I'm gonna put you on my list, and we're gonna run it back eventually." Let's
Right.
do it again, right? And if you best me again, let's run it back again, right? Run it back until one of us retire,
Yeah.
but it makes it fun. It's fun. It's in the spirit of building and uplifting each other. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my man, I have felt better and uplifted and a better version of myself just after this conversation.
Yeah.
If any of my listeners or anybody that's listening to this would like to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you and become a king or a king or queen themselves, I guess?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, you can, just look at our, we have a website, deadlyfitbodies.com, or on all the social media platforms, we're on IG, Facebook, at the same moniker, Deadly Fit Bodies. And yeah, just reach out, connect, kind of see what we're doing. We're on YouTube, we're everywhere. So, or pull up to an INBA show and just listen out for the loud groups. It's like, oh, that's them right there. Because once
He's
you
not
hear, because once you hear the
lying.
noise,
Yeah.
that's them right there.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, man. I really appreciate your time again. Do me a favor, stay on for just a little bit longer on this. And for everybody else, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed this segment just as much as I did right now. And until then,
Yeah.
guys, next time, dose.
All right. Peace.
Ooh, man, how did that go for you, man? How do you feel?